Of the last 100 decks that landed on your desk, what percentage of them, gut feel, had AI on the first slide?
Gosh, I would say at least 80%.
Wow, that's a big one.
Co-founder relationships. That's something that can absolutely kill your company. So, I mean, I've seen companies where there are two best friends from childhood and they work so well together. And, it's just been magical building this company together. And that, when times get tough and disagreements happen, and that can absolutely kill a company.
Okay, Jennifer, thank you so much for joining us. First off, we're going to fire away with some quick fire questions. Yes or no answers. Don't stress if it's not yes or no. We'll get through them and then we will dive into the meat. Are you ready, Jennifer?
I'm ready.
Let's do this. Okay. So, of the last 100 decks that landed on your desk, what percentage of them, gut feel, had AI on the first slide?
Gosh, I would say at least 80%.
Wow, that's a big one. Okay. Generalist VC or vertical VC? Who should an early built world founder take money from?
I would have to say vertical if it's possible.
Okay, cool. What's the most overrated metric in an early stage deck?
TAM.
Nice. One coachability red flag that gets a founder cut.
Defensibility or defensiveness, I should say.
Mm-hmm. Nice. Okay. Series A, is the bar higher or lower than it was 2 years ago, which would be 2024?
I would say across all early stage, pre-seed, seed, Series A, the bar is definitely higher.
Okay. Yeah, cool. Okay. Last one then. What what does a contact founder you'd most want to back in 2027 look like?
Oh, I think I need more than one word for that, but
Go for it. One
I would
sentence. One
say,
sentence.
okay, one sentence. Okay. So a founder who has identified a hair on fire problem is incredibly passionate about solving that problem and uh, hopefully has, customers already, chomping at the bit for what they're creating.
Mm-hmm. Very nice. Okay, let's get into the meat of this then. So, Jennifer, what
Yeah.
you came from Techstars Boston. Maybe you could just briefly tell us what you did, what was your role, and that kind of thing that you did there. But what did that teach you that you couldn't have learned anywhere else?
Yeah, so I was with Techstars Boston for about 5 years. I was the managing director, so I sourced, selected, invested in early stage pre-seed companies and ran them through a 3-month accelerator program. And throughout my time there, I mean, I reviewed thousands of applications each year, so I got to see a lot of patterns and I guess that, a lot of certain founder traits that you sort of start to see as, you review applications, you interview. I've interviewed hundreds of founders each year to finally, select the few that get to participate in the program. So, you start to see common things of, especially as the founders go through the program and you get to see like, okay, these are the ones that I bet on. Did that actually, come to fruition the way I thought that, it would. And, as you continue to follow them, 1 year out or 2 years out or even longer, you say like, okay, what worked and what didn't.
Mm, nice. Did many of them? Well, like how I got feel like how many of them would you say were accurate when you first met them to how their journeys continued?
Well, I mean, we had a pretty good success rate in terms of, I think, you know, even out of I think it was like 65, 66 companies that I got to work with over the course of my 5 years there. I'd say at least, 80% are still alive today, 85%. So a good number.
Very cool. And like, could you just tell us briefly, like, what kind of companies was Techstars investing in?
Yeah, so certain Techstars programs focus on specific verticals, but my program was a generalist program. So I saw a lot of companies across, because we were in Boston, I saw a lot of health tech companies. I saw actually quite a few in the built world space. So that was sort of my another area for me that I got to enjoy and participate in, and sort of see founders in that space and work with them. I saw some ed tech founders and More generally, I'd say B2B. Enterprise, not as much in the direct to consumer space.
What's the ups? What's the sell for a founder here? Like, why would they partner with Techstars to go through something like this?
Yeah, so I think a lot of founders are first-time founders, and they may have lived experience in the sort of problem that they're trying to solve, but they don't necessarily have the foundation of how to build a solid, enduring company. A lot of them come to Techstars for the network, so and the mentorship. So it is a mentorship-driven program. The founders are surrounded by people with a lot of expertise across a lot of different areas who can help them sort of unblock a lot of the challenges that early stage founders face.
And not to skip ahead too far, but I'm guessing you're gonna take some of the learnings from Techstars into Suffolk's Boost program.
I sure am. I think, I guess I would say I'm already, I'm about 3 weeks into my role here on the Suffolk Technologies team. I've talked to a lot of founders and I've invested in a lot of founders over the past several years. And so, taking some of that pattern matching that I've seen, but also coming in with some fresh eyes. Like, as you said, I have been a more of a generalist. I have, dabbled in the built world space, but, I can take some of the things that I've seen in the past in terms of, like I said, founder traits um, and really try to apply that in, at Boost. And we're looking to make this bigger and better every single year.
Sounds good. Is it so when you're at Techstars, was there like a common like trait or something that you saw within founders that made it through versus ones that maybe didn't?
Yeah, I mean, I think in general, we look for founders who are curious, who can actually listen to feedback, who are resilient. The founder journey is really hard, and so you want to have founders who are not going to give up when times get tough, because they most certainly will get tough. Um, and founders who are self-aware in this founder journey, like there's a lot that they don't know, even if you have that lived experience, even if you come from this world and you've lived and breathed this pain point that you're trying to solve. There's a lot that founders don't know, and being able to listen to feedback from those around you, listen to your customer. I think those are incredibly important traits.
And you mentioned earlier on that defensiveness was a coachability red flag. So I guess
Yeah.
this goes hand in hand with feedback. How do you take feedback? Like advice for people, like if you're,
Yeah.
yeah, how do people, how do you take feedback well and implement them? Maybe is the question.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I think it's using feedback as data, right? I think you're going to get a lot of feedback from a lot of different people, and sometimes it's you get sort of that whiplash of one person, sort of quote unquote expert might say one thing, and another may have a different perspective, and so using those as data points, and then coming to your decision based, being an expert in that field or in this space, being able to take that and then ultimately make a decision. So it's not necessarily following what other people are telling you all the time, but it's using that as data to ultimately make a solid decision.
What on the flip side then? What kills a startup? Like if you must have seen your fair share of ones that have been through and maybe it didn't quite work out. Like, is there any common things that you saw at Techstars which were just like, yeah, this is not going to work or didn't work?
Yeah, I think there are, I guess, two main things. One, it would be, if the problem that they were trying to solve was not a big enough problem, not enough, either customers in that space, and it was more of a nice to have versus a must have. And I think one of one of the big ones is sort of co-founder relationships. That's something that can absolutely kill your company. So, I mean, I've seen companies where there are two best friends from childhood and they work so well together, and it's just been magical building this company together, and that when times get tough and disagreements happen, and that can absolutely kill a company. So I always advise even the best of friends, even if they're starting to get, like, you have to have a co-founder agreement in place. One person really has to be the ultimate decision maker. I often see people say like, oh, we're 50-50 equity. And it's like, no, you can't do that. Like there has to be one person who is ultimately in charge, ultimately is the decision maker, just to make sure that the company doesn't die. Yep, exactly.
Yeah. Okay. So, um, I think you mentioned something a few moments ago at the start of the answer to your last question, which was about not building for, like, maybe the problem's not big enough or something along those lines.
Hmm.
Did you see
Yeah.
that? You mentioned also, like, I know textiles is more general, but you also mentioned that you did do some built world stuff before
Hmm.
Suffolk. Did you see this more so in the built world space where people were like creating a problem creating a solution in search of a problem? Because just to add, this is something that we hear time and time again within this industry. I just wonder if it's more prevalent in construction tech, than it is in other industries in your experience.
Um, yeah, I mean, I think that um, sometimes when people have lived the experience themselves, they feel like, oh my gosh, everybody feels this. Like this is, and they might, and it could be something, and this is why I love customer discovery. And I always say, you can never stop talking to customers, right? Like even if you feel like you've hit the nail on the head, like always be talking to customers, always be listening, getting feedback. But a lot of times someone will say like, "Oh, I had this problem, so everyone must have this problem," and they don't quite realize like, oh, maybe it was specific to the firm that they were at, or maybe it was, maybe it is a problem, but it's not a, like I said, not a hair on fire problem, not something that either affects a lot of people or is painful enough that um, they're willing to pay for a solution.
Okay. Mm. Yeah, I guess it so it can happen in most
I mean,
industries.
it honestly can happen in any space. So I think it you know potentially more so in the built world. I that remains to be seen for me,
Yeah.
but it's definitely a problem across the board.
One poorly managed incident. That's all it takes to demolish the entire profit on your project. And right now, the only thing standing between you and that disaster is your superintendent showing up at 3 a.m. buried in paperwork before the day's even started. That's why Breadcrumb exists. Not to add more technology to the job site, but to give the people running it tools that actually work the way they do. Safety plans signed off, orientations completed on any phone in any language, permits processed without the back and forth, no paper, no chasing signatures, all synced directly into Procore. With OSHA penalties reaching into the tens of thousands, that kind of oversight isn't just a nice to have, it's everything. Over 1 million workers across 50,000 projects globally have Breadcrumb in their pocket. Book a demo at breadcrumb.co. That's breadcrumb.co. Links in the show notes. Major construction projects are complex, and construction managers know that every day things don't go as planned. Unfortunately, most don't know what and why until it's too late. The best construction leaders know that the secret to delivering on schedule is for everyone to be planning together, committing to targets, and tracking their performance every day. By combining look-aheads, weekly work plans, visual staging diagrams, and daily activity briefings into one multiplayer platform, Afex is where the world's leading projects are planned and coordinated. Join the largest projects and contractors across Europe, the UK, Asia, Australia, and New Zealand and discover why at afex.co. In construction, precision matters. Every budget line, every schedule, every document. But too often, project data is scattered across tools and departments, creating risky silos. That's where ArcDesk comes in. ArcDesk is the all-in-one construction management platform designed to connect your entire project operation, from opportunity through to tender, all the way to handover. With real-time dashboards, cost control, scheduling, procurement, and document management in one place, ArcDesk gives you complete visibility and control. Trusted by contractors, subcontractors, and asset owners worldwide, ArcDesk has powered landmark projects from shopping centres to Europe's tallest buildings. If you're ready to reduce risk, protect your margins, and deliver projects with confidence, discover ArcDesk today. Visit arcdesk.com, that's ARCH desk.com, and see how leading firms are building smarter with ArcDesk. Hey listeners, I want to take a quick break to remind you about the Bricks Bytes newsletter. If you're interested in learning about the technology shaping the future of construction, you won't want to miss the valuable insights we share each week. To get this exclusive content delivered straight to your inbox, head over to www.bricks-bytes.com and sign up today. Link is in the show notes. Back to the show. Okay, cool. All right. So you mentioned, and when I first asked you, that about 80% of the decks that come across your deck in the last few years had AI in them. Uh, yeah. How did that evolve, like over the years? Yeah. How did the decks develop over the period?
Well, I think, over time, we've seen, AI in decks for years, but, a couple of years now, and it's become more and more. Now I think it's more like table stakes, right? Like, so there's like sort of like a base layer or sort of base expectation of like, yeah, every company is going to be using AI in some format to, drive efficiency or, just, ease workflow and productivity, but like really understanding how they're using AI, if it is more of a, sort of a foundation of what they're building versus just helping to streamline things and is more a feature. So I think our understanding of that, as we sort of dig in and like, is this a real moat that they're building, like using AI, is important for us to understand because, like I said, at this day and age, everyone is using AI. So what is good, like, how is their use of AI going to help them? Like really build that technological moat that's going to prevent others from doing what they're doing.
Yeah. What would be an example of some of these moats that are like separate a good AI company from a one that's like not?
Yeah. Well, I think it's how, like, are they using, like, are they training their data, right? Like, are they learning from their data to then be able to, um, use it going forward to, to again, like have like to build a proprietary data set that will help evolve what they're building and help their customers ultimately. So I think it's harder to, you have to sort of dig in and really understand how they're using it and how they're building it. But do they have that sort of machine learning piece of it involved as well?
Have you seen like uh well, I guess in recent times, especially within like construction technology, there's been a lot of more general venture capital firms writing big checks into,
Hmm.
let's say, construction, or maybe like just to relate it more broadly into industries they don't necessarily know. And we've seen
Hmm.
this because we're within the conversation, and uh, people message us regularly, and we the questioning like, why the hell has someone put so much money into this company, and da 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 da. And it seems to be common names that come up, or common culprits that come up as well. Um, have you seen this, and do you think that the capital always ends up in the right place?
Uh, I mean, in terms of like generalist VCs investing in, let's say, built world
Yeah,
companies.
yeah, like
Yeah.
because sometimes they can cut really large checks, but then uh, like the product they're investing in, people are like, people from within the industry, I should say, are a bit like,
Hmm.
hmm, interesting.
Yeah. Yeah, I think, I want to encourage generalist VCs to invest in this space. I think there are a lot of great companies, and I think right now it's just this time there's huge opportunity for innovation. And so I want to, definitely support support founders in this space, and I think the more money that's flowing into it is great. I do think generalist VCs can add a ton of value to built world startups, but I think they do actually need to spend a little bit of time understanding the space in general, because again, there are nuances, there are long sales cycles, and so understanding that so that they can set realistic expectations of what timeframes on sales, time to hands-on conversions, things like that, that it's going to take. So they don't put inappropriate pressure on the startups, because they don't necessarily understand the space. But I think there's an opportunity, and like I said before, like especially if the founder has that deep industry expertise, then a generalist VC could be a great fit for them, who could help sort of round out, in terms of other types of introductions or other types of, advisory role, advice that they can give them. Um, Whereas maybe, if there is a founder that is not necessarily from the space, but has identified, a big problem to solve, having a more strategic or a vertical VC to help them really get entrenched into the ecosystem and the industry, I think is probably a better play.
Mm. And I think you mentioned that when we first started chatting about picking a vertical VC or specialist VC
Mhm.
versus a general and earlier stages. So I think just to play that back, so like the earlier the company, the more important it is to have maybe someone's who has like a more strategic or s- specific to an industry, and then as the company begins to scale, maybe you bring in, I don't want to say the big
Yeah,
guns, but typically speaking, a generalist is going to write a bigger check
yeah,
and maybe have different
yeah.
resources that was once available to you.
Yeah, I think at the earliest stages, I think having a vertical VC, especially in this space, is really, would be really advantageous because, right now, I mean, especially with AI, like things are happening so quickly that I think speed to market is going to be super important, like is going to play a big role in the success of a lot of companies. And so if you can have a VC, like a Suffolk Tech, who can like really like rolls up their sleeves and works with their founders on helping them get introductions, getting them in the door, having their solutions and their products like pressure tested and piloted with these companies in the industry. Like the sooner that can happen, the faster they can take off.
Mm, okay, very cool. Are you bullish on AI agents? Do you think it's hype, or do you think it's
Yeah,
think there's a
I guess I'm cautiously bullish. I think that there's, I think there's a space for them. Absolutely. Like in terms of, if there are certain workflows or, you know, s- basically, doing doing the stuff that no one really wants to do, that just, take a lot of time and it's just sort of tedious. I think where we need to be careful is making sure that the agents are not being put in place where there is like a bigger risk involved, right? So if there's something where there's, human life or, things that's going to have could potentially have a catastrophic effect if something goes wrong, I think that's where we need to be cautious. And maybe those are the places where we do still need human in the loop.
mm-hmm. Nice. Yeah. Okay. So maybe you experienced this at Techstars. I'm guessing you didn't, and like I can relate to our experience now on Bricks and Bytes. Like, there's a shed ton of AI companies in the space, and it's becoming very, very, very difficult to understand why one differs from another. And this is me. This is someone who's spent a good chunk of my life in the industry and now exploring the technology side of the industry. So I can only feel for the people who have to buy these solutions or make like executive decisions on buying this technology. I'm guessing. I'm guessing you see. You saw something similar in Techstars where there was just like a ton of AI companies that where it was difficult to extract what the value proposition or what the differentiation was. Would that be right?
It does get harder and harder. It certainly does. And I think, because, the space gets crowded too, right? Like so a lot of, you see a lot of companies sort of popping up and so it's hard to, sometimes it's hard to know like who can win this. And so I think that's where I think at the earliest stages you place a bigger emphasis on the founder because again, like the solution is going to most likely at these stages, like it's going to pivot, it's going to change.
Mm,
And so you really focus on, who is the founder that's building this and do they have the ability to make those pivots and identify them and not be so sort of wrapped around and their actual solution, and so invested in the actual solution versus, hey, like I'm really passionate about this problem and I'm going to do everything that I can to figure out the best way to solve it. So I think, yeah, so you try to we're making a bet on the founder, that the founder is the one who's going to push through and actually be successful.
Is there any, talking of founders, are there any like are there any particular traits or like I don't want to say genetics, maybe is the wrong word, but background or something like that from a person that as you have found to be particularly desirable?
I've seen a lot of different, I mean, I think it's more like some of those traits that I said before in terms of the ones that are, you know, coachable, they're resilient, I think the ones too, like I've had founders who are just like excellent communicators, and you're like, yes, this person, they said they were going to do something and they actually did it, and they followed through, and so that builds the trust, and I think especially in this industry, trust and relationship is a huge piece of it. So I think those types of founders who are able to foster that are great. And then in terms of other things like, school, yes, no, who knows? I think one interesting one is those who've played competitive sports in the past. That's sort of an interesting twist on it. They have a little bit maybe of that drive and competitiveness that
Mm.
push them. So I take a look at that as well.
Would you say your preference is like a scrappy founder or someone polished?
Oh, I want both. I want both. I want I want someone who can sit and tell a great story um has that polish and that sort of professionalism, but I want someone who's going to roll up their sleeves and get dirty and can stretch things for as long as possible as well.
Very cool. Okay. Nice, nice, nice. Why do you think it's harder now to do? Why do you think the bar has risen for all of those funding stages that we mentioned earlier? Because I think I asked specifically about Series A, but then you expanded and said across all of the early
Yeah.
stage funding rounds.
Yeah, it just I've know like the past couple of years, I think basically, the economic environment, I think, VCs in general are looking to de-risk as much as possible. And so, setting the bar a little, they want to see like more metrics. They want to see like, oh, like, what used to be, hey, you have a great idea on the back of a napkin, like, yep, here's some money. Now it's like, well, how many customers do you have and how much revenue do you have? And so I think, it's just a factor of trying to de-risk as much as possible.
Okay. And you obviously okay. No, in fact, let's move on to Suffolk Tech because it's a recent. So as you mentioned, week number 3.
Yes.
Um, what drew you to Suffolk Tech?
Yeah, so I had known, one or two of the members of the team over the past couple of years. Always impressed with, the Suffolk Tech group, what they are doing. They're obviously, their Boost Accelerator has been, in Boston. It's, widely known. And for me, I think what, sort of the timing just worked out really, really well. So two things. One was the timing. Well, Techstars Boston had decided not to run a program in Boston this year. They'll be back next year. And so I connected with Parker Munt on the team and learned a little bit about how they were thinking about Boost going forward and wanting to really just supercharge it, which is great. And for me, like I love this space. Like I said before, like at Techstars, I started investing more and more in built world startups. So it's a space that I've started to get to know, and I think there's such a huge opportunity here. This industry is sort of ripe for innovation, and I was actually like surprised. Like I talked to a lot of my founders, and they're like, "Yeah, a lot of this, a lot of the work happens still on like spreadsheets and like pen and paper." And so I think there's just such an enormous opportunity for innovation here, and I couldn't think of a better partner to do this with than with Suffolk Technology. They're just at the forefront of innovation and really trying to put the right technology in the hands of the people um, to have an impact. And for me, it was interesting. I have an investor friend who was recently talking about how a lot of, investors have to have that trade-off of, making an impact or, getting a big return. And I think Suffolk has like, I think we can do both, right? Like, investing in these startups who are really going to transform this industry to make an impact. And it impacts every single part of everyone's life. It impacts the way we live, the way we work, where we get treated when we're sick, where we get
Mhm.
educated, how we travel. Like it really touches every single aspect of our life. And for me, like I want to be part of that. I want to be part of an organization that can have that impact, but also we will also it also have those returns, those big, big returns. So I'm super excited.
Yeah, yeah. It's a difficult, it's a tough industry. I don't think we definitely don't enjoy like maybe the success of some of the other industries as well that people pour their dollars into. I think in recent we don't have many IPOs in this industry. I think maybe five that people could recite off the top of their head. Although there was one earlier this year, and the prediction is there will be another one this year as well within the construction tech scene. So maybe it's heating up there, but
Mhm,
yeah, we shall see. Hopefully, Suffolk can be the catalyst for a lot of this.
mhm,
What do you what what's okay? Yeah, so coming into this industry is very difficult for everyone. Like, it's a whole new like. Well, you're just focusing on this. I know you have some experience before, but now it's like this is just sole
mhm.
focus. And there's like a whole new language to learn, and like the nuance and politics and everything else that you need to learn about the industry. Um, what would you say is something that you want to spend the next 6 months learning and understanding before you form some hot takes?
Yeah, I think I mean I obviously like you said, I come with a lot of, the startup experience, accelerator experience. I think for me, like I know that there's and I think this is applicable in some other areas too, but I think in this industry in particular is really understanding the adoption process, right? Like a lot, it is, sort of more of an old school industry, like I said, that comes from a lot of like, hey, we use a lot of paper and pen and spreadsheets and things. And so, what does it really take to drive adoption of new technology? And understanding that a lot of times the buyer of the solution is not necessarily the end user, and so really understanding that dynamic as well, just to sort of be able to understand that and then help our founders navigate it as well.
Anything that you've noticed, first off, about people investing in this space? Any kind of observations, generally speaking, or are you still heads down, working out, working everything out?
Yeah, I'm still pretty heads down, but it's like drinking from a fire hose, which is fantastic. But because we also have our applications open for Boost now, so I'm like already digging in and starting to review applications, meet with founders, and just jumping right in.
Yeah, best place to be. Very nice. Think talking about accelerators. Obviously, you're going to be bringing in some of the knowledge that you had at Techstars. Like, I feel like I asked this question again, but already, but I'll ask it. I'll ask it again just in case. Like, what makes a good accelerator?
That's a great question. So I think there are different types of accelerators. There is the more sort of generalist accelerators that teach you the foundations. They give you some mentorship and network. Those are fantastic. I think depending on the industry, a more vertical focused accelerator could be the right choice. So that's why for me, I think like Boost is absolutely phenomenal. The way that they've structured their program, it's absolutely second to none because they're taking these founders, and again, like I said, like adoption is tricky, and that's one of the biggest, I think, challenges that founders in this space have is that yeah, they might have a great technology, but can they get it into the hands of the right people, and can they get their foot in the door in terms of um, getting their products in their hands. So what Boost does is it's not just about like, oh, can we put this in, on a Suffolk job site, but we have a network of, over 55 and growing operating partners across the industry who are fully engaged and are, partner with us where we can take these, startup founders and say, hey, here's this solution. Can you pressure test it, kick the tires, tell them, like, give them feedback, run some pilots, and be having that entry point and being able to do that months and months earlier, if not year earlier, than any other startup that is not participating in this type of accelerator. Like that's the value that these founders get is just really unbelievable.
Mm. When maybe the question is also similar to what I asked yesterday about yesterday earlier about the applications that go into an accelerator. But does that change because this is within construction now? Like, are you still looking for same kind of traits, which I think you mentioned, like hair on fire
Mhm.
problem? Tam
Yeah.
was a non-issue for you, ish. uh, yeah, like those kind of things.
Yeah, in terms of what I'm looking for, again, I think there are sort of maybe two different profiles of founders, and there's the founder that has that deep, that comes from the industry. They've lived it, they've breathed it, they've identified this as a problem, and they want to solve it. And then there are other founders who, again, may not come from the industry. They have more of like that, maybe they're an entrepreneur at heart, or but they've identified this problem and they know how to attack it. They're just like, hey, I have this other perspective. They have some fresh eyes on it, and they're able to create a solution to really solve this problem. So I think there's sort of two profiles. I'll learn as we go in terms of maybe if I'll down the line have a stronger opinion on one versus the other. Um, but I think again, it's really around who is the found like why is the founder why is this founder uniquely positioned to solve this problem, and is this problem going to be a big enough problem that can have a big impact and they can actually um, create a big enough company that's venture backable.
Mhm, mhm. Yeah, it's, yeah, it must be. I think that sifting through applications in this space right now with
It's
AI
hard.
and everything else must be very hard.
It is hard.
Can you
But
give?
that's yeah.
I don't know how much you can give away, but we spoke to Parker last year, and he said like
Mhm.
last year was. These are not his exact words, but the message is like what it was. He said that it was like the first year that they had seen a real uptick in the number of robotics companies who are applying to the
Wow.
accelerator. I don't know if it's too early to say. Obviously, we're only in May, right? We have a few months until this thing kicks off. But are you seeing that? Can you share anything or not yet?
Yeah, our applications just opened about 2 weeks ago, and they actually close on June 5th. So if you're a founder building in this space, apply by June 5th.
Apply.
Uh, so a little plug there, but yeah, I mean, I would say that founders typically wait until the last minute to submit their application.
Oh
So we
yeah.
usually see a big influx in the last 72 hours.
Hmm. I would say that's a
But yeah.
sign of a true
Yeah.
founder.
Yeah. Well, you know what it is? I think my theory is that, the founders, they want to put their best foot forward. So they want to have as much sort of traction to show. Um, and so they sort of wait to the last minute so they can say like, oh yeah, this is what we've, been able. They try to, so that potentially, more impressive on paper.
Yeah, oh, fair enough. Okay, cool. And I think we are in this age of also noise as well, like a lot of noise and the different advice going around. Um, what's the worst piece of advice you think founders are being given right now?
Well, you know what? I don't know if it's advice that they're being given, but I'd say the one advice that would say is, um, not all money is created equally, and this sort of goes back to the investment piece of it. So I think a lot of founders, especially in the early stage, they want to raise money, get things going, and they may get term sheets or from investors who have some maybe not so friendly terms. And I think sometimes founders, can be, somewhat desperate to like say like, hey, I just need this money to get this going, or especially if it's like a hardware company that tends to be much more capital intensive. But it's like, hey, I just need some money, and they're sometimes willing to accept terms that are not the best just for that, sort of short term, win. And I would say, don't do it. Don't. I think I think you have to really look at the terms. You don't, this is a long game, right? You want to,
Mm,
you want to be around for a long time, and, early sort of, if you sign on for, with terms that are really not founder friendly or really not friendly at all. Like in the beginning, that can have sort of downstream effects. So, take it seriously, get some, have somebody else look at the agreement, get some advice. But, I think it's a very, very hard thing to do to turn
Mm.
down money. But I think in the long run, it can be the right call in certain situations.
Yeah, I love this advice. It's so easy. Like when you're running a business and you're trying
Yeah,
to move quick and do things, like
right?
it's so easy to be short sighted, but then not realize the consequence of your decision like later on. I think
Exactly.
that we done this founders roundtable a few weeks ago where we had four founders who had sold their businesses within construction technology, and that was one of the key things I took away from that. Actually, was about like get a good lawyer from day one. Get all your
Yeah.
legal agreements in order. Don't like sign anything
Yes.
stupid because yeah, if you get to that point in your business, which could be 5, 10 years down the line, and suddenly you realize that there is some non-preferable term or something that you got
Right.
signed because it wasn't checked or you didn't think about it properly at the time, it could really derail things. So yeah, I
Yeah.
love that. Very cool. Okay, Jennifer. Well, we usually let people plug at the end, but you plugged already, so
I already
you
plugged. Sorry.
preempted it. You're all good. Don't worry. So
Yeah.
applications June the 5th. Sounds good. Yeah, we will get this out before then. So I guess people listening, they will have by the time this comes out, I guess maybe a week or 10 days or so to get their applications in. So strongly encourage people to do that. And also for people that listen to this, probably already know, but Suffolk Tech hold one of the best events in like I think the industry actually. I'm not just saying this because you're on the podcast. I genuinely do believe that Boston Built Week is one of the best events that anyone who's interested in construction technology can attend and should attend. So I'm very much looking forward to seeing you all there in November. And with that, Jennifer, it's been a pleasure. We can catch up in another few months and see how all this went.
Yeah. Sounds great. Thank you so much for having me.
Thank you.